Okay, so the Canelo Triple G trilogy fight has now been officially announced for September 17th live on DAZN pay-per-view. Now, some people will look at this as a duck, that Canelo doesn't really fancy the Dmitry Bivol rematch right now, and he's taken on somebody who he probably views as an easier touch, an older guy, somebody who he's fought twice and at least officially has a win over. Personally, I don't have an issue with Canelo doing this. At the end of the day, this is a guy who was pushing for greatness. This is a guy who is going up through the weight divisions, whose confidence was extremely high, who hadn't yet realized where his ceiling was. He was talking about fighting the likes of Alexander Usyk up at cruiserweight. Now, while I think that he could beat somebody like Makabu at cruiserweight, and yes, I still believe that, it has not changed anything, the fact that Canelo lost to Bivol, because Makabu was nowhere near as fast as Bivol. He doesn't have those kind of boxing skills. And in fact, if you go back and watch my videos where I was talking about Canelo fighting Ilunga Makabu, I said in those videos that I think Makabu is an easier fight than the top light heavyweights, as in Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol. Yes, I said the Makabu fight was an easier fight. So for Canelo to switch gears here, rather than fight Bivol, fight the trilogy with Triple G, as I understand it, the Triple G fight, and I don't know if this is confirmed or official, but this is what I've heard, that the Triple G fight was actually signed before he got in the ring with Bivol. So that's how confident Canelo and I guess Matchroom and DAZN were of Canelo beating Bivol, but Dmitry Bivol threw a spanner in the works, and now Canelo has an L on his record going into the Triple G trilogy fight. And will Canelo be affected in terms of confidence going into the Golovkin trilogy? As in, will he not quite be himself? Or will the fact that he lost to Bivol actually light a fire underneath him? Because I remember when Canelo lost to Floyd Mayweather, the improvement in Canelo from the Mayweather fight over his next few fights was massive. It's like that loss made him up his levels. He responded tremendously well. Some fighters, they'll get despondent and they'll go into kind of a depression in their career where after a loss, they're not quite the same, they're not quite sure of themselves. But other fighters will go into overdrive. A similar thing happened when Alexander Povetkin lost to Klitschko. He went into overdrive, although some people would argue that it was maybe substance enhanced in terms of Povetkin's run of form after the Klitschko fight. And I guess some people might argue the same thing about Canelo after he lost to Floyd Mayweather. But whatever the case may be, what do you guys think will be the case here when Canelo steps in the ring on September 17th with Triple G? Will he have a renewed sense of, how can I describe it, determination? Will he be even more fired up to do a job on Golovkin because of the fact that he lost to Bivol to try and redeem himself? Or will he be missing a little something by way of confidence? And will that give Golovkin the opportunity to finally get an official win over Canelo Alvarez? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Now, stylistically, Gennady Golovkin is nothing like Dmitry Bivol. He's not as fast of hand or of foot. He's not as tall. For my money, he's not as good a boxer. Golovkin can box, of course. We saw that in the second Canelo fight. And it's going to be interesting to see which tactics he chooses to employ here. Whether we see the Golovkin from the first fight, who was a pressure fighter, or whether we see the Golovkin from the second fight, who was actually moving around and boxing and using his jab. Perhaps we'll see a combination of the two. Under Jonathan Banks, he does seem to like to use his jab and box a little bit more than he did in the past. Will that be a wise idea against Canelo? Or is he better off going back to the old Golovkin and marching in and trying to do damage against Canelo Alvarez? You guys let me know what you think in the comments below. And as far as what this fight does for Canelo, obviously there's money. Obviously there's the closing of the Golovkin chapter, hopefully with a conclusive winner this time. And in terms of preparation for a potential Bivol rematch, because Canelo's talking about fighting Bivol, and he has said that this is what he wants to do, fight Golovkin, then fight Bivol later on in the year. And in terms of prep for Bivol, well, again, Golovkin isn't stylistically like Bivol, but if he can win and win convincingly, that will give him a confidence boost. And if Golovkin decides to box here and use his jab, it might offer some type of preparation stylistically for Dmitry Bivol. Again, depending on how Golovkin decides to box. So, yeah, I've got no issue with this fight. Canelo was pushing for greatness. He's dropping back down now to fight someone closer to his natural size and closer to his dimensions in Triple G, a guy who is over 40 years of age now. So I know some of you are going to pour scorn on Canelo and say that he's ducking Bivol right now and he should go straight into the Bivol rematch. I've never really been one to criticize fighters for not taking immediate rematches because I understand what it can do to the confidence of a fighter. Now, in this case, Canelo wasn't knocked out by Bivol, not even close. So I think there's more of a case for Canelo taking an immediate rematch against Bivol rather than someone who's been knocked out badly. But still, the fact that he apparently has got this Bivol rematch, regardless of if he fights him next or if he fights him after the Golovkin trilogy, it still makes sense in a way because the Golovkin fight is probably going to be worth more money or potentially worth more money. And it's a guy he's more familiar with. It's a guy who, in most people's eyes, and I'm sure in his own eyes, in his own mind, he stands a better chance against. He probably thinks this is an easier fight than the Bivol fight. So, yeah, take on Golovkin, get your confidence back, get sharp again, because he hasn't fought. If you think of all the people that Canelo's fought in the past over the past few years, who's been on the level of a Golovkin? You could maybe say Danny Jacobs, but Jacobs didn't look particularly impressive in that fight to me. Other than that, there's nobody that's been on the level of a Triple G. So even though Triple G isn't like Bivol stylistically, just in terms of being sharp, just in terms of getting your mind where it needs to be, in terms of boxing IQ and sharpening all those things, it'll still be decent preparation for Dmitry Bivol. If he decides to go ahead with the Bivol rematch, we have to see what happens in this Canelo trilogy fight, how it turns out, if Canelo takes punishment, how good he looks, if he wins, if he looks good winning. It all depends. If he doesn't, perhaps he'll stay at 168 and see out the rest of his career there. But if he destroys Golovkin, maybe he'll feel encouraged to go back up and have another crack at Dmitry Bivol. And as for Bivol, Eddie Hearn was saying prior to this official announcement that if Canelo fights Triple G next in the trilogy fight, he would love to bring Bivol to the UK to fight Joshua Bratzy. That is, as far as I'm concerned, Joshua Bratzy's first loss. I mean, I'm tempted to absolutely say you can take that to the bank because Bratzy did show some good things against Craig Spider Richards, but he didn't show enough, in my view, to be able to beat a guy like Bivol, and he showed a lot of vulnerability there, particularly in terms of his stamina. And I was wondering when he was, during the fight, and he was very inactive in certain rounds for long periods of rounds where he wasn't throwing any punches, wasn't really moving his head. And I wondered, is this a tactical thing? Because it just seemed odd to me. And Virgil Hunter after the fight said absolutely not. He didn't like Bratzy just standing there doing nothing. And I have to imagine that he was just mindful of his stamina, mindful of whether he could go the 12 because he's never been the 12 before. And I do think that the occasion, maybe, the nerves might have got to Bratzy a little bit because whenever he got close to Spider Richards, he unloaded with all sorts of power shots, and then he needed a long time in the round to recover from each one of those bursts. He fought like a guy who was anxious to hurt his opponent. And to me, that's somebody who is a bit nervous when they're anxious like that to land a huge shot. So, yeah, for my money, Bratzy isn't quite ready for Bivol, but hey, he's 29 years of age. Perhaps they feel like they need to get a move on anyway. If he loses to Bivol and puts up a good performance, I guess they can say he'll come again. So anyway, that's for a separate video. Let me know what you guys think about Canelo Triple G3. Are you disappointed? Did you want to see Canelo fight Bivol next? Or are you perfectly happy with this trilogy fight? Perhaps you didn't think Canelo would lose to Bivol, and now that he has lost to Bivol, you give Triple G more of a chance in this fight. I'm not saying that's how I feel. I'm talking about some of you guys out there. You might feel that way. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you're tired of the biased narratives and mass censorship on mainstream platforms, and you want to be part of a community of critical thinkers who love free speech just as much as you do, then come and join me on Patreon and access my weekly no-holds-barred, censorship-free podcast where we lift the lid on a wide variety of controversial topics. It's not mainstream friendly, it's not politically correct, but that's the whole point. We dare to stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. Just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called Hatman Hot Topics. You'll gain access to a minimum of 2 hours of exclusive content every single week, including podcasts, videos, interviews, live stream Q&As, as well as my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Not to mention a vast back catalog of hundreds of hours of previous episodes. You can listen via the Patreon app with the option to download in high quality MP3. We've also got an Element group where you can come and chat and hang out with myself and other members. Unlike Discord, it has full end-to-end encryption, is decentralized, and is 100% censorship free. You can also send voice notes as well as much larger audio and video files than you can on Discord. So come and sign up on Patreon. There's no contract, there's no commitment, you can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a cup of coffee. So I'll see you over there. I'm out.